All right, Clay Guida and Jim Miller. This was kind of a strange fight. So Clay Guida comes right out, boom, hits Miller hard, boom. Miller responds, and it looked like Clay was hurt bad. I mean, you could kind of see he was still on his feet, but his head went down and he wasn't moving as much. And all of a sudden, Miller jumped right into a guillotine, essentially like a flying guillotine. I mean, he pulls him down on his feet, pulls guard. And it was a big mess, and Guida's arm was trapped in there, so his neck was exposed. His arm was trapped between the legs. Miller's fresh. He's squeezing. And in addition, Clay was hurt. Clay was hurt as he went into this, so it was really tough to see. I mean, there was part of me that was going, hey, wait, Clay's out. Someone needs to check on Clay. And there's another part going, well, Clay's nice and relaxed, but in many ways, he's being saved. If he would have been on his feet where he was dazed, this is almost a good thing for Clay that at least he's brought down to the ground. It was one of those two. One of those two was going to be right, and it turned out one of those two was right, but it was the first one. Clay was caught, and he couldn't breathe, and he was a little bit dazed, didn't really know where he was. He didn't defend much, but at the same time, that was hard to tell. Is he not defending because he's in trouble, or is he not defending because he's in an okay spot and he's gathering himself? All in all, for what it was, very short fight. A lot happened in a very short fight. Good win. Good win by Jim Miller. Okay, so Colby Covington versus Robbie Lawler. A lot of things happened here. If I was to give you a prediction before this fight, I would have told you it was going to be 3 to 4 minutes of hell. And then if Colby survived that, it was going to start leaning towards Colby. If you guys were to give me a prediction for the fight, you probably would have said something very close. You probably would have said something very, very close to that. Sure enough, I mean, that really was the case. Now, here's what Colby did a good job of. Those 3 or 4 minutes of hell where Robbie Lawler is going to be painful and explosive and powerful and all these different things. Colby did a good job of getting his hands on him. And if you go watch that fight, the first 30 seconds was very telling because this was not a striker versus grappler contest, as many people predicted it would be. It ultimately turned into one for some moments. But that's not how it started. And the reason that Colby was able to have so much success with the wrestling was right there in that first 30 seconds. Boom, boom, boom. He was firing back. He was firing shots at Robbie. He was making Robbie bring his hands up, making him respect those shots. That's when the wrestling can work. I remember the days when wrestling was enough. But that was in the 90s. The very early, the mid, but it was the 90s. It's not been enough. It's a great base. It's a great starting point, but you have to be able to have those hands just to know where your target is, just to distract the guy to get him guessing. Colby had him guessing all night. Colby's pace was remarkable. Colby's ability to do takedowns, to ground and pound, to ride, to go right back to it, to stay fresh. People saw that and people were really inspired by it. But I do think if there was any takeaway from that fight, and possibly as the night as a whole, it was Colby striking. Not just his hands. He slipped some of those kicks in there. Sometimes it was a front push to the body. A lot of head kicks came in. Tried a couple of elbows, trapped him, boom. I mean, grabbed some tie clinch and went to the knees. His striking was fantastic. It really was. And, I'll tell you guys who's a great striker, and he never gets credit for it. Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman is such a good boxer, but he's also so good defensively. Chris gets out of the way. He's like a matador. He always slips out of the way. Boom, boom, lands his shot back. Because he's predominantly a wrestler, they kind of overlook and don't give him credit for that skill. I felt as though Colby in many ways looked like Chris Weidman tonight. That's who I would compare him to. He looked like a Chris Weidman that could use those hands. He could slip. He could roll with punches. He could take a shot every now and then. Then he could get into the body. Then he could get to the leg. Then he could push him into the fence. I just think as we're looking at Colby and we're looking at the story of the fight, what a great contest. I mean, look, here's the thing, too. Robbie Lawler, before this fight happened, we knew was an incredible competitor and we knew was one of the toughest guys in the sport. After this fight and Robbie didn't win a single round, we know he's one of the best competitors and we know he's one of the toughest guys in the sport. I mean, Robbie did what Robbie goes out and does. He just did. Colby kept a pace on him that made Robbie defensive. And very seldomly do you ever see Robbie defensive. Maybe somebody's controlling him against his will, or you're taking shots. It's usually one of those two. Not very many times do you see him be defensive. Robbie was forced to be defensive for 13 to 17 to 18 minutes of the 25-minute contest. He was forced to be because Colby just kept so much offense on him. Colby was either touching him or he would just be missing it. But there was still something there. There was something there that Robbie had to deal with the whole night. And it made Colby's job a little bit easier in some regards, right? I mean, the best defense is a good offense. I think that you saw that tonight. It's very hard to watch that fight, be super impressed with what you saw, but not immediately look forward to Usman. I know we're going to have some fun for a couple of weeks. I know Colby and Masvidal are both going to try to make their arguments, but I suspect sooner than later, Dana's probably going to come out and go, look, that's the fight. And I imagine they've even got a venue and they're looking at and maybe something this year. Colby had alluded to the fact that it's going to be in November in Madison Square Garden. I don't know if he was just dropping a hint, dropping a wish, or if somebody had whispered to him, look, Kamaru's next fight is going to be in November in Madison Square Garden. I think that if we are to accept that it is Colby versus Kamaru, that's a really hard one to predict, isn't it? And I don't think either guy is going to have a whole lot of fun looking at their opponent's skill and going, you suck at this or you're bad at that. They're the same guy. They're the same guy. They've both got this incredible pace. They both don't mind the championship rounds. They both are great at getting on top. They both will scramble all night long, and they both have developed some really good hands. They both got the intangibles, which is the toughness and the grit and the courage. That is a mirror image fight. And I must say to you, I did not fully know this about Colby. I knew Colby was great. I have seen Colby win a world championship. I have known Colby since he was 9 years old. I did not know Colby was as good with the stand-up as he showed tonight. And that's a very intimidating thing. When a fighter can be so good that he wins a world championship and then he comes back months later and he's even better, it's a very exciting thing. Colby is clearly in the right gym with the right coaches, and he's disciplined and working on the right stuff. Other side of that coin, last time I saw Kamaru Usman, I left saying the same thing. I did not know Kamaru Usman was that good. I just did not know he was that good. I did not know he was good enough to hold down, get on top of, rinse and repeat for 25 minutes, Tyron Woodley. So we're learning stuff. Who's better? One way to find out. But the good news is it really does appear, without argument, we've isolated the two guys that need to be fighting for the championship.